Oh, you're getting it done that way. Welcome back. Happy birthday. We should probably sit down. Listos. No vas a entrar. Jordan, nice to meet you. I don't know. Your shoes are in the car, and I took them out, and I just they're somewhere in the house. Right there.
I just remember when I was texting. He doesn't know.
Well, we expect good questions from you. Yeah, please.
Hello?
If they're in French, I'll translate them to Spanish. Badly.
You're going to translate?
Badly, I said.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, I can at least pick up. Yeah, there's some Latin roots. Come on.
Yeah, exactly. Say bonjour.
Oh, totally. Every day.
Yes. Every day. That's what I say when I wake up.
That's right.
Bonjour,
Mon ami. Yeah, le monde. There's a lot of empty seats.
There are a lot of people.
So there's people outside that want to come in. At some point, are you going to let them in?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think like right now. I'm going to go check.
¿No te ves como alguien que no dormía bien? ¿Te ves bien?
Descansé. Mira,
Hay veces que 5 minutos hacen la diferencia
a
del mundo.
veces gente cambia la vida.
¿Sí?
De repente fue como un restart. Eso y chocolate. Decidí tomar café porque no necesito. I didn't need that edge, you know? So,
Así le hice también un chocolatito con café. Digo, que tiene café.
sí, claro. Pero it's a mellower thing. The one from Café Barra that you guys gave us, that one's really strong.
But,
From Café Barra is Ensenada.
coffee or?
Because it's not a dark roast. They're stronger than dark roast. Dark roast actually kills some of the caffeine. It's good to know. It stays stronger, but there's less caffeine.
No está destacado el lugar.
Le acabo de decir a Jansu que hay gente de gente.
Pues sí, ya pasó de tiempo.
Ahí están estos güeyes.
El amigo de Jonathan me recuerda a Jonathan.
Sí, pero no se parece al,
No se parece
al
para
flaco
nada.
que conocimos, ¿no?
No,
No es que la barba también es difícil, pero la edad a veces pues cambia, ¿no? Entonces hay que hablar de lo... Estamos... de acknowledgement. Si want to do that, I can do esto, should I?
no importa. He estado cotorreando de lo que se trata. Lo importante es hablar de...
Pero va a ser bajando de arriba para abajo, hacia el lander, hacia el
Hay
comedor.
que hablar antes de la arquitectura del lugar y cómo todo tiene que ver con la arquitectura del lugar. Para que entiendan que es sencillo.
Este cuarto que está aquí son los del NAT.
Ah, órale, aquí está.
Qué bueno que voy a...
Ahí está la lista, güey.
Thank you to all those people. Y se van a traer un mezcal.
Hello, everyone. Hello, welcome. Can you hear me okay? Do I have to speak up higher? Hello, thank you so much for being here. My name is Andrew 𝗬𝗏. I am the executive director of ICA, the Institute of Contemporary Art San Diego. Thank you so much for being here tonight. You're here to see me talk, right? You don't need to see them talk. I wanted to thank you all so much, and especially thank the brothers, the 𝗕𝗿𝗄𝗃 and Einar for being here, as well as to Hugh Davies for leading this conversation. Thank you guys so much. I have a few things I wanted to share with you. One, just a little bit about the Institute of Contemporary Art. We present experimental art and learning with a mission to question everything. I also want to acknowledge that we are on unceded ancestral homeland of the 𝗬𝗖𝗄 peoples. We wish to pay our respects to the ancestors, elders, and relatives of the 𝗬𝗖𝗄 nation who have cared for the land on which we are on. We are committed to standing in solidarity by respecting this 𝗬𝗖𝗄 land and the 𝗬𝗖𝗄 people, including all tribal nations. I'd like to thank our board of directors, a number of whom are here in the audience, so thank you very much as I'm looking at you. Thank you so much for being here. And thanks also to our amazing ICA team who put all of this together. So a big round of applause to everyone. Thank you. And a special thank you also to our curatorial team, to Jordan 𝗓𝗓𝗓, who is over here, as well as to Roxana, she is our curator, and to Roxana Lopez, who is also on our curatorial team, and to all of the installers who put that amazing show together. So thank you so much for that. This exhibition has been made possible through the support of Hyundai, through Quint Gallery, who is here tonight, Larry Petit and Deborah McGinty Petit. Thank you so much. And to the Consulate General of Mexico in San Diego. Our organization is made possible by ongoing support from the Linda Brandes Foundation, Buchenbach Foundation, the Somm Family Foundation, and the City of San Diego. And thank you to our partners at First Republic Bank for their support of institutional programming, including making this evening possible tonight. And an extra special thank you to Minguei for sharing this wonderful space, to making all of this possible, to have this theater here so we can be in a silent, calm space so we can hear the discussion tonight. And I want to also thank our ICA members. For those who aren't an ICA member, tonight is the night. You can be a member. You can join and help support programming. We have a number of exhibitions and programs happening, so check in with Julia Barch, who is at our table, for members. Join. It starts at $50. That's an easy thing to help support the arts in San Diego. And we reach over 60,000 people a year through our program, so that is a wonderful thing to contribute to. I'm going to thank Hugh as well for being here, and thank you so much for joining us. For those who don't know Hugh, he led the Museum of Contemporary Art San Diego in La Jolla and downtown for over 30 years before retiring in 2017, and now he does these wonderful talks. He can speak with the brothers who he has known and worked with for many years. He's facilitated presentations and acquisitions of their works for many years at the museum. And so thank you so much for being here, Hugh. I'll give a little bit of background also on the Torre Brothers. Their resume is literally pages long, and I only have 2 pages here. So I will give a brief introduction to their accolades, many accolades, and then you'll get to hear a lot more about their work as well. They have an extensive list, of which I'm just going to share a little bit here. They were born in the early 60s in Guadalajara in Mexico and moved to the US at a young age, eventually both studying at CSU Long Beach and then settling in San Diego and Valle Guadalupe in Mexico, where their studio is. They have since begun their collaboration in the 1990s and have since beginning their collaboration in the 90s, they have received the U.S. Artist Fellowship Award, the Louis Comfort Tiffany Award, the Joan Mitchell Foundation Award, and the San Diego Art Prize. They have had 18 solo museum exhibitions, completed 8 major public art projects, and have participated in 4 biennials. I think that list has grown since this has been written. And their work has been shown in over 15 countries and is in the collection of more than 20 museums worldwide, not to mention countless private collections. They currently have a traveling exhibition supported by the Smithsonian that began at the newly launched Cheech Museum in Riverside, and they will launch the Smithsonian's Latin American Art Museum sometime in the next 10 years. We'll see when it happens. We are pleased to be hosting the first individual exhibition of their work in San Diego. Please give a round of applause to the brothers, Einar and 𝗕𝗿𝗄𝗃.
Is this mic on? Thank you. Can you hear me? Ooh. Wonderful to be here. Great crowd. And these guys don't talk very well, so I'm going to have to talk for a long time to make up for that. They're not very articulate, and they don't have ideas or a sense of humor. But other than that, it's going to be a very successful evening. We thought that we would start by having Einar and Jamex walk you through the exhibition you've just seen, and I will occasionally interject questions to inspire more information to be forthcoming.
Perfect. He's our translator. Va a ser en español, eh? So, as part of the redundancy, but I must thank the people we need to be thankful to, which of course the Minguei for hosting us here, the ICA, which of course Andrew, Jordan, Sarah, Roxana, and the group of installers, Joe, who's filming us now and helped us with the videos, the patrocinadores, Hyundai, the Quint Gallery, the Petites, Cónsul Mexicano de San Diego, and from the NAT, Michael and Yari, which we couldn't have done that room without all of those wonderful animals from another era. Anyway, when we started this, we first moved in to just sort of look at the space, which is a tremendously difficult space. If you look at it, it's a cave. We all know that about it. It's sort of this, you know, with the renovations, it's certainly gotten a lot better, but it's not an easy place to divvy up. And I think that we took our time looking at it and saying, how do we look at this space in a way that can be, you know, walked through and it makes sense in some way. If we can have the first slide.
You need a translation, don't you?
Primo.
So of course the upstairs space is really probably the most difficult part because it's really big and it has a lot of opportunity, and yet how do you use it when you can't really put scaffolding up there because there's a big concrete and steel stairs in the way. So we thought about having, you know, we started to toy with the ideas of the world and the underworld, which of course both the Aztecs and the Mayas have a lot on that realm. The underworld being sort of the spirit world or the world of the dead. And we thought, okay, so let's do this membrane or a permeable membrane. Of course, even Greek mythology has some great stuff about going to the underworld.
It took us a while to figure out how to make this semi-permeable membrane, or the idea of it. It's dividing the two worlds, because like Einar said, the gallery itself is the underworld. The catacombs. Everything is a basement, which also gives you a lot of control. You can control light and everything that goes on in terms of theatrics of setting up an installation. We roll with the whole idea of penetrating an underworld.
And so, yeah, we are very theatrical. We love lighting our exhibitions with sort of the drama and getting rid of the gallery, a lot of dark space, and then having the stuff that you want lit. Very much like a set design in some ways. So when we were looking at that giant space up above that we couldn't easily get to, because even with a sister's lift you can only get to some of it, but there's stairs in the way, we thought we got to do a projection. So we thought, well, let's try to take some of our images and do a very simple animation. Can we go back to the first slide? So you see how this is just basically one image and then it goes into the other. And it was a way to give you the idea of being above and then below. The pond, the sort of lilies giving you the pond idea, and of course below the lilies. Next slide. And the next slide. And underneath we have the fishes and maybe some mermaids and getting caught in the nets. A lot of the project has to do with our commentary on our human struggle, trying to be how terrible we are at husbandry of animals and the earth.
So the ICA is the perfect place to try to, as an experimental art space. So for us, the whole project came at a really crucial time because we have been doing a lot of public art, and we are like here with public art, which is great. Public art has a place as an artist, but there's nothing like having an opportunity to do whatever it is, whatever the hell it is you need to do as an artist, and this was it. It came at a very appropriate moment in our careers.
And so this piece, the first one you see on the stairs, is a piece that was commissioned by the Fisher Museum, the USC Museum, for an exhibition 2001, I believe, which is funny because that was a space odyssey. I just thought about that. And that show was called Mixed Feelings, and that had luminaries like Mark Bradford and Marcos Ramirez and Amalia Mesa Baines were part of the show. Just wonderful, wonderful artists. And we have exhibited this piece in a few places, including it was at the 𝗬𝗕 Museum. This was part of that. And right now, the National Museum of the American Latino, Smithsonian, is talking to the aerospace about it, because the Aerospace Museum for the Smithsonian is also interested in having contemporary art exhibitions. And of course, we couldn't be more thrilled than to include our 𝗧cie𝗿𝗿𝗄 piece in there.
So the piece is a morphing of an Olmec head and the lunar lander. I think it's kind of obvious that it is. So the Olmec heads are these colossal heads in the Isthmus of Mexico. And since they're cut above the neck, they present an odd aesthetic for us who we have a Western lens. But for our purpose of creating a spaceship, it was ideal because it's a ball, it's a capsule. So all we had to do is put legs on the Olmec head.
And the backdrop, you'll see the moon is already colonized with saguaro cactus, and the little mountains and the hills are corn chips. And on either end of it, you'll see little cards. There's un hot doguero and also a taquero, which means we've arrived. And of course, the earth in the background is doing what we're doing to it. It's a little warm, and on another. So there's a lot of layers to the work, and we can speak just about this piece for a while. But one of the things that we're very interested in is the new philosophy that they're talking about, this rapture concept of rapture, of this world is not here for long. We're going to just move to another world, which is kind of ridiculous, I think. I mean, I thought this one's pretty perfect. If we don't ruin it, I don't know. I'm attached, I guess. I'm romantic. I like walks on the beach and stuff, you know. So I think that maybe we should take care of it, but here we go. And on the astronaut, which we lovingly call 𝗬𝗏𝗏 𝗧𝗏, a rough translation of Neil Armstrong, is 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏. And 𝗬𝗏𝗏𝗏 is kind of this mother goddess we've used a lot in our work. And here we've morphed her, of course, with an astronaut.
Can I just ask you, I was fascinated that the Olmec head appeared to contain Jesus Christ, and how did he get there?
So inside the Olmec head, inside the capsule, there's an astronaut, which also kind of makes fun of the so-called Mayan astronaut, which is this carving from Palenque, Mexico, that looks like an astronaut taking off. Which was very popular in the 1970s with a book by Eric von Däniken, Chariots of the Gods. All the unexplained stuff of the ancients was because of the aliens. That was his premise, which basically in between the words is like saying all this stuff that the brown and black people created that we can't explain was probably right.
They had help.
Yeah, they couldn't have done it, right? So anyway, inside the capsule, you see a morphing of the savior myths, Jesus and Quetzalcoatl of the Aztecs, the feather serpents. That's why the baby Jesus is feathered.
Tar and feathered, or just feathered?
Not tar, just feathered.
And underneath, there's this fire. There's a car tire with a fire in the middle, and that's the engine. And it's got these aboriginal sculptures from the yeseros from Tijuana that are selling these original, literally from Australia, the look and feel, which is they're being used as a kind of sage, and we have them dancing around the fire to make sure that it takes off. So for us they're a symbol of basically a curandero or I'm getting some feedback. So. And so the tires on the ground are the craters of them on the moon, obviously, and and the flag is rattlesnakes, and the stars are transistors. The rattlesnakes are, of course, a big part of the imagery from the Aztecs. In fact, 𝗬𝗧 is named, I'm pretty sure that 𝗬𝗧 means snake skirt, because her skirt is made out of rattlesnakes, woven.
So we're kids of the 1960s. We saw the lunar lander in a tiny black and white TV in Guadalajara, Mexico. And that was probably the most incredible moment when I was a kid in Guadalajara. And of course, it's also the end of the colonial era. African countries were barely getting their independence in the 60s. So we missed the fact that, of course, we're colonializing the moon now in a way, as an act.
And the origin, of course, of the lunar lander was the Cold War with the Russians, who were first to space, and that's when Kennedy said in 8 years we'll be in the moon, and so even that is, you all remember the Cold War, the one that's back. Next slide. So the image of the lunar lander is very much the image of from the Apollo series. Those are glass boxes, literally like an aquarium built out of sheet glass and silicone. Next slide.
So our permeable membrane that we wanted to separate the world that we live in to the underworld. At some point, it became more like a cenote, and in that sense, it had more of a ritualistic meaning.
And that space in the back, that where the mansión de fête, or the party mansion, if you will, when we were making it, we thought, wow, this reminds us of what was the film by Buñuel, where they go in and they were poisoned and they all die. And I thought, wow, we weren't really thinking of it, and yet it's really interesting how the maybe subconscious plays in. Next slide.
So the table of the super bridge, which is the installation that Einar is talking about, is the counterpoint to the other installation that we'll show you later. Is the installation in the dark room in the end of the gallery, where you see the two monsters facing off. So this is the oblivious super bridge enjoying a very opulent theater.
And we have this, this is a series we started in Europe. We have a show touring in Europe right now. And we first did one in Netherlands and then made another version in Lille and then another one in Poland. And right now it's in Portugal, in the Glass Museum in Portugal. And we're really intrigued about how we're both, we see the super rich as both villains, and yet they're also kind of celebrities because of the pulled up by your bootstraps. And so you have this both repugnance, but then you're also, God, why didn't they invite me to the party? And we wanted to play. We love that duality. Our work has a lot to do with that ambiguous thing. We're both calling it, and at the same time, we're part of it. So when we talk about global warming, we drove here. We're not above it. We take airplanes. We have cell phones. We don't think art is a good soapbox for political change, but it is part of change. So I think it's better to open the field for questions than it is for artists to become preachy and give you answers. Because preachiness is not a good way to get through people. Next slide, please.
Somebody asked us when we're installing, what about the dead babies?
What about the dead babies?
So in the table, we put these resin castings of Cupid dolls. Cupid dolls are not babies, they're Cupid dolls. So it's not about dead babies, but it is about cannibalism, which is slightly less worse.
But I mean, having people starve in the world is in a way cannibalizing them, because obviously some people die and some people live. And again, we're not calling, we're not doing a judgment call. By the way, that was a translation. What about the babies? So we wanted it to both be sort of beautiful, shiny, and disgusting, and rancid, and all of the above. And we wanted all these feelings to be happening when you looked at this. And the background, of course, is the tile in the back is from images we took in Porto. This very, very Portuguese tile. The fact that the bottom of the tiles are coming off, we really like the way that it speaks about how they had an epoch with lots of money from colonial times, and it's spent, and then there is, upkeep, and some of that stuff is beautiful in its decay as well.
Can you talk a little bit about the stuffed animals, where they
Yes.
came from and how you use them?
The Museum of Natural History here in San Diego was kind enough to lend us a set of stuffed animals and displays with the eggs and the butterflies. And of course, the stuffed animals are this kitsch symbolism of consumerism to the extreme. I can't really say about the Natural History Museum because they didn't obtain their stuff through hunting or anything like that. A lot of the stuff they have actually comes from the zoo. From the zoo. So, but symbolically, of course, the statement is there.
And they're also part of an epoch, which is interesting how politically incorrect it is now, and yet, in Amsterdam a few years ago, I saw stores selling brand new ones, and in people's homes, they had brand new ones, and it was completely cool. And I think really cool looking, but the problem is if we're taking animals from the wild, then might be problematic. But also, the Natural History Museums were acquiring animals for research purposes, and all of that has changed quite a bit with digital. Demands are very different nowadays, and things are shifting a lot, I imagine. But it was really wonderful to have them because they do speak about both, again, the old home of money, and yet there's a decay happening. A little feather might be landing on your soup.
And the cabinet of curiosities type of...
Which is how museums got started. Next slide. I mean, the idea of museums was basically rich people acquiring things throughout the world, showing them at home, and that home turned into a museum. And then eventually, so they all started at vanity projects. I don't know why that's such a big deal nowadays.
What's happening behind the grates of the windows in the mansion?
Those are images from either Portugal or Spain of embutidos, which are like the meats, like the serrano ham and that kind of thing. And again, it has to do with stores of these same animals, but now we're going to store them and we're going to consume them. So it has to do with consumables. So in one way, we're consuming them, and the same thing with a little chicken, by the way. So that guy's name is a free-range chicken. Because like us, we can do a lot of things, but we choose to sit on the couch and watch TV. So there he is. He could go to the gym, but... And of course, in this image, we have the lenticular that is part of the murals of La Jolla mural that we decided to lenticularize for this exhibition.
So that wasn't a study for the mural. It happened after the mural?
It was sort of an existing piece that we decided to make into a lenticular and thought, because, I mean, Elon Musk is driving that thing. So, I mean, it is about the wealthy after all, and about his little... It was funny, we made that piece right before he got into his Twitter problematics that don't seem to stop. Next slide, please. A couple of details. So we're glassblowers. A lot of people knew us as glassblowers originally. I think we still do it.
Yeah, there's a glassblowing shop here in Bread and Salt. Sometimes we blow glass there. Where we have a space in Bread and Salt.
Art Hell with Kathleen Mitchell.
But we started glassblowing in 1978, so we're very involved in that world. And I think you mentioned that we have a set of works traveling in Europe right now, mostly in glass museums, but not exclusively in glass museums. And it's strange to have these parallel lives. We get known for the glass, and then we get known through the Chicano art world, and then the lenticular stuff has been opening a lot of doors for us in other ways, but almost independently from the other doors.
So for us, I think when people ask us what we are, we've learned not to be self-defined, because being self-defined is to be self-limited. We want to not only be a lot of things, but we want to be things we haven't been. And I think as artists, we're interested in not being stuck to one thing. And even though, of course, there is a need for, curatorially or otherwise to define you, whether it's nationality or the medium you're using, we just want to be able to try something else. So yes, we're lenticularists, if that's part of what we do. It's a big part of what we do. but it's not only thing we do. We're border artists, absolutely. I think border is probably one of the better tags because it's broad. It's a gigantic region. Thursday we opened the show from the Smithsonian National Latino Museum. We opened the show that's traveling through their auspices in Corpus Christi. So it's literally from one end of the border to the other. Next. So the glass piece on the heart on the left is glass. The other pieces are resin cast. We do a lot of resin casting as well. We love the fact that in resin you can put inclusions, which means you can put things inside and they won't burn up. If they were glass, it would have to be able to stand 1,000 degrees, and not much can. So that gives you an idea why the base and those two gentlemen, that heart's got two fathers. It's called the talk, and so the heart's wondering why he's got two dads, and so they're giving him the talk.
A little word about the wallpaper. We get it done in Tijuana, which is part of being a border artist. Of course, in Tijuana, it's a fraction of the price, and of course, you don't declare it when you're crossing the border.
It's part of the free trade agreement. We really wanted to also show the glass. So every piece has its own story. We love narrative. Every work has and I'm going to talk about every single piece, but every single one, like the one in the middle is Barrio Logan. Is on his forehead. We made it in Barrio Logan at Art Hell, and he's wearing a dynamite vest because of gentrification. Barrio Logan's blowing up, and that's the tongue-in-cheek thing, the angle that we like to joke with, because it's both good and bad. It's, we all want good coffee and good restaurants, but there's also people getting kicked out of their neighborhoods. What do you do? Next slide. Next.
See. So this one right here we did for this exhibition because we're talking about the future too. And the title for that is The Last Vestige of Humanity. So we're always thinking that when artificial intelligence takes over, they're going to want our brains, but we're saying no, they're not going to want our brains, they're going to want other parts.
Maybe animalism will win. Next. And the two pieces on the right, we made them as the kind of maquettes for the lenticular pieces that are in the black room in the back. So that is the 𝗬𝗲 with the city of Mexico City is shown in dice and domino set, and then the other one is the Mictlantecuhtli with his guts coming out. He's just the lord of the underworld or death. Next slide.
Why do you pick Godzilla to represent the female goddess?
Because it was the original Godzilla is a really terrible plastic suit with a guy obviously inside of it, and that was the monster movie when we were growing up as kids, and we saw it in Colegio Cervantes in Guadalajara, and we remember it as like a kind of a burned image. And of course now there's been remakes and then more remakes, but the original one, I mean, it's pretty hilarious. You can see the creases in the rubber as he's walking around, and it doesn't matter because you had to suspend disbelief. That's the whole point, I guess, of these movies. And we always thought that 𝗬𝗲 was also very much kind of like she has like these big puffy slippers, and she looked like both a scary monster, but also like a lady who answered the door in curlers, and so you don't know, she might cut your head off. I mean, there is that. So we thought it was an obvious mix of the two, and again, one of the things we really wanted to talk about with this project is how if you see 𝗬𝗲 as a mother goddess, which is one of the theories, is that it is a sort of mother goddess in the pantheon of the Aztecs. We thought, well, she's grumpy because she wants us to be more in tune with nature, and she wants to get rid of all of our modernity, if you will. But then by being Godzilla and destroying the cities, then we have 𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵𝗵, the god of death, on the other side. It's Putin, out of his entrails are coming more freeways, and he's trying to sell us more oil, and he wants to continue the juggernaut of consumerism, especially of chlorofluorocarbons. So who's going to, if either one of them wins, it could be our demise. I mean, even if the world wins, it could be that the humans aren't going to win. And again, that's the ambiguity we want to show, is that in both cases, our lifestyle needs to change or we're doomed.
A little bit about the space. We wanted to experiment with lenticulars in a different way, because we have always done lenticulars in context with a wall or architecture, and we wanted to eliminate that in a dark room. And I think to some extent it succeeds. It would have been ideal to a completely dark room, but I think as an ongoing experiment is something that we would want to look into more. And also the projection on the floor totally surprised us. We were thinking, well, why don't we just project on the floor? But we never thought that we'd get that clarity on a dark gray cement. And Andrew hooked us up with a fellow in Mexico City that had a drone, and he filmed, sent Glorieta in Mexico City for us to project.
And it's really wonderful to see the change of light, because we had them in the evening and in the daylight, so you have a change happening, and the little cars moving and the little humans underneath. At certain hour, you'll see them cast a shadow. That's really wonderful, because they're both ants, and yet we're ants. You know, it's us down there, so to speak. And also the just giganticness of Mexico City, that is such a tremendously rich and densely populated megalopolis.
It's the perfect arena for this clash of titans, that urban setting.
And it's the deities from the underground, if you will, coming up, the Aztec deities having this clash. The interesting detail also with 𝗬𝗖𝗿𝗄 was that, next slide, she, when they unearthed her, I believe it was like late 1800s, they were so scared of the power of that piece that they buried her again. It's kind of like a Hollywood movie. And at some point they put her in like a metal cage, which is even more wild, as if though is going to come to life. And they're really worried that the natives would get restless. As kitsch and funny as that sounds, this happened. So there was all of this really funny history that almost sounds like a movie. Again, like some Egyptian sarcophagus that has battled everybody who opened it had died within 5 years type of story. And yet, you know, now she's of course in el Museo Antropológico.
So this is the story of two monsters facing up, one representing progress and technology, and the other one representing nature that can also kill us. In 𝗬𝗬𝗄's part, you can see COVID virus flying in the air. Who we are as humans nowadays, we can't easily go back to nature either. So we didn't want to do the simplistic linear thing of technology bad, nature good, because that's totally simplistic. We wanted the face-off of the two monsters on the grounds here. And the thing that makes me really happy is when I see little kids stomping on cars, which they seem to do naturally.
That's going to be for the slides, so I think we should just maybe have a conversation, and then eventually we'll take questions.
One of the sort of main questions for me is you've collaborated as siblings for over 30 years, and I wondered, when you were growing up, did you quarrel at all, or were you always in step, or did this happen later in life?
We always done a little bit of collaboration, but when I was when we were both in college, he was doing his thing and I was doing my thing. It wasn't, you know, we were in college in the early 80s, and it wasn't until the 90s that we collaborated in full. For the longest, for a few years, we were having exhibitions where it was a third his work, third my work, and a third collaborative. But one thing I like to say about collaboration is it releases you from ultimate responsibility, and that is hugely liberating. I think we underestimate the weight on individual artists who are working by themselves, it's tremendous.
The blame the brother syndrome.
Yes, exactly.
And also, when we were kids, we were 3.5 years apart, which when you're children, it's a huge difference. We didn't hang out that much because he was much older than me as children. As we got older is when we started to maybe see more eye to eye. By 2000, we were collaborating, I think, fully in earnest. So in the 90s, we slowly switched as we started to begin to show, first museum show, all that stuff. We started to notice that when we added both of the, both of our, because it's about layers, really. Our work is a lot about layers. In terms of meaning, sometimes it's in terms of the actual materials we're using. We realized that it got richer, it got better. That even though we have similar interests in themes and in materials, we also are bringing different things to the table. Otherwise, if we're too similar, we sure would not get along.
But was it in making glass that you, as I understand it, it really takes a couple of people to blow glass, and is that how you sort of began, or were you exchanging ideas about art before that process?
We did before that process. I mean, we used to do the 𝗧cie 𝗿𝗿𝗄𝗕 a lot as kids. But glass, indeed, it's a collaborative process, and anybody that tries to do blown glass by themselves is foolish. It's really foolish. The more help you have, the better. So it was a natural thing to want to collaborate in glass, and I think those were our first collaborations. It was about starting something, and then him suggesting something, and then I'm saying, I respond by telling him, well, why don't you do it? Why don't you take over it? And it became kind of an organic from point A to point B. It was never, has never been a big issue. It's not always a smooth travels. I think true collaboration is rooted in complete respect. Otherwise, it's a non-starter.
One more thing I would say about collaboration is that, everybody is a collaborator because no artist makes art out of nowhere. They're consuming art somehow. They had maybe a great parenting, teachers, parents who took them to museums. All this stuff gets added, and it all comes from somewhere. So everybody's a collaboration. We have to be humble about that. Nobody comes out full-blown artist and wonderful and makes great work. It's a set of experiences. And it also, I think, takes away a lot of the pressure my brother was talking about because we do a lot of teaching, and we tell the young students, hey, you don't worry so much about making great art, because great art comes from making. If you want to make a masterpiece, that's the fool's errand, because it may be, one day you might do that, but it's not because you set out to do it. It has to do with all of that experience, all of that stuff, all of the exchanges you have with other artists, with people you trust, with your partner, that makes you a better artist, and eventually you might make great work. And it's much better to be humble about that additive process than to imagine that you have to come up with greatness out of somewhere.
I was also intrigued when we were talking the other day that when you were first setting off as artists, you were very influenced or paid a lot of attention to German expressionism. And I think that element of caricature that you were describing in George Gross's work also involves contemporary political figures like Hitler in the case of George Gross. So I wonder with Putin, is there the risk of the work not having the same resonance when Putin, well, he'll always be remembered, I'm afraid, but what is your feeling about that contemporary critique of culture and politics?
I think to do something with politics is you run the danger of the news cycle fading out. We made pieces. We had a piece that is in the ASU Museum's collection that had Rumsfeld as a goalkeeper. And you have to remember Rumsfeld to make that piece relevant. And so we started to think, well, yeah, it seems really important to us for a few years, but as soon as you're gone with the cycle, Putin has he changed the Constitution to stay there longer, so he has longevity, it seems. Nothing like writing your own rules. So I think that, that's always the problem, and it's also difficult to use politics because you have to be careful that the soapbox is, you're doing something more than just talking about something that may be obvious. If it's obvious, then it's, again, if it's obvious, you're becoming preachy. So how to make the piece also interesting? For instance, the piece we chose for the lenticular, looks like Putin's head fit on him perfectly. The big ear, the whole thing. I was like, and also it became an aesthetic decision that he actually was a good part of it, both for the political, but hopefully that the piece can hold its own in the long run. But it's a great question and not an easy one to answer.
It's an obvious question, but starting out when you were working in glass, you became very close to 𝗕𝗁𝗁𝗖, and I know he's still a friend of yours, but what other artists have influenced you, or do you look to as successful role models, or whose work you admire?
You know Thurman Statham.
Yes.
So he hugely played as a role as a mentor to us for many years. We worked for him for a while. And that was when you work for another artist and you're a young artist, that's when you understand what other artists go through just to keep a studio going, the reality, which is something art school can never give you. So we will always be indebted to Thurman Statham.
And we learned what to do and what not to do, because there's some things he would say, well, everybody has to make their own compromises as an artist. And we learned some things from him that maybe we wouldn't do, but then there's some things that maybe we do that he wouldn't. So we learned that funny game of somehow having your integrity in one hand and not taking a bite out of the wrong hand, and also there's this German artist in glass, one of the founding fathers, Erwin Eisch from Bavaria, from Fraunau. He was an artist in glass that was very much a good painter, a good artist, and also did glass. So he was an exclusive glass, which we always related to because we do glass and then we don't do glass. We make. We're going to be teaching in the Pilchuck School of Glass this summer, and we're going to need to blow glass for a couple of weeks just to freshen up because we don't want to show up and we have to get back on the bicycle, so to speak. But we love it. We love the process and the camaraderie of having people around you. So when we travel and do glass in different countries and different places, the studio's different, the glass is different. And the fact that we're itinerant glass blowers, like itinerant farm workers, it really has made us a lot more adept at being flexible and allowing being somewhere to be more part of the work we're making. So we don't like to go to Portugal and make the pieces we would make here. We're going to go to Portugal, learn a little bit. We go to the markets, buy some stuff, and we, as much as we can, be affected by being there, because that's what a residency should be. It shouldn't be to show them what you would make at home. It should be what is it when you are there in making new work.
You're the quintessential bicultural, binational artists, and in this exhibition we can see how you draw on Aztec and Mayan imagery, but what from sort of U.S. culture do you think you draw most? Or how do you balance those two cultures in your work?
I think a lot of our work delves in consumerism culture and in all its aspects and levels. And yes, we take a lot of from pre-Columbian stuff because it's such a rich wealth to draw from. And also lately, since we've been going to do workshops in Europe, we've been, we are mostly European mutts, so of course we're going to claim that stuff as ours.
We like to say we collaborate with the old masters because they never say no. And also on, for us, for a while when we were doing the pre-Columbian, when we went to Europe, we were asked for our first show we did out there in the museums. It's 9 countries so far that we've gone to. Everywhere we go, we make some new work. So the exhibit has works from all of the countries representing, which is kind of a fun tour, kind of a way to have a traveling exhibition. We were first asked to work off of Flemish culture because it was a museum in northern Belgium. And of course, we right away thought, Bosch and Bruegel family, and these guys were making surreal work before it was surreal. When everybody else was still painting just stuff for churches, these guys were making wild scenes about heaven, hell, and people drinking and eating, animal flesh and all kinds of debauchery, and which is pretty much a depiction of the Middle Ages. So we thought that's perfect for us. Of course, we want to collaborate with these guys.
I think of you as Bosch meets TikTok.
Thank you.
Well, we're getting close to 5 o'clock, but besides the show you're opening next week in Corpus Christi, that show is then traveling to El Paso. And what else is coming up? I know you have an incredibly full calendar.
So that show's going to go to El Paso, and then to Philbrook in Tulsa, then the Corning Museum of Glass in New York, and then it's going to go to the Crocker here in Sacramento, California, and then the Mint Museum in North Carolina. And I think they might add still 1 or 2. Catalog will be out in about early next year for the Philbrook show. It got delayed because they were opening a museum and everything got delayed. Other than that, we're opening a complete new show that might have a couple of these installations from this show in Minguei Museum, which is in San Antonio, Texas. That opens in February of next year. It's their flagship exhibition for next year. So it's the whole Tobin Gallery, which is probably 3 times bigger than this space. So we got to get to work. And we're doing a show in Mexico City, Arte Abierto. It's also a gigantic space in a gallery, a gigantic gallery in like a high-end mall in Pedregal in Mexico City.
And the body of work we have in Europe is on view right now in Portugal, and that's traveling to France apparently, right?
Yeah, the Table of the Rich that we made there is going to go to a museum in northern France, apparently for the beginning next year, which I don't know when we'll have time to go set that up, but good problems, I guess.
A lot on your plates. Would you like us to take questions from the audience? Any questions?
Over here.
I see a good...
Yes. I can share.
Einar, you mentioned the word 𝗧cie in your talk, and I grew up on the border, so I know what 𝗧cie is, or I think I know what 𝗧cie is all about. Well, you live it. But maybe for the broader audience, can you explain a little bit more about that very interesting choice of words?
So 𝗧cie, I believe, was coined by 𝗧cie𝗿𝗿𝗲 who used to be on the Rockefeller Foundation, a native from San Antonio, Texas, and is living there now. We saw him on our site visit earlier this year. It's great to catch up with him. And basically, it's talking about artists that are making art with whatever they can find. And so it might be made out of old car parts, junkyards. We love that. But mind you, I will say one thing that we are careful with is not to talk about found objects as such, because I think people imagine that we're just finding trash and making art out of it. And I think you have to go out of your way to find the exact stuff that works for you. So we search for these things everywhere across the border, and we acquire a lot of things. Without that, we couldn't make our work, especially embellishment. So when we find, doll eyes, we buy 200 doll eyes because we love doll eyes, and they're on the table right now inside of cups and so on, for instance. So that goes back to material culture, to talk about an anthropological term. These are the objects that describe our culture and when we're living right now. So when we're getting all of these things and acquiring them and including them in our work, it's like it's kind of forensic of our times.
Yes, hello. I'd like to first just really compliment you on the fact that you can work together. No, really, that is amazing. That's almost as amazing as your art is, I think. But I have a question about one piece that you have on the wall in the Portugal room, which is kind of an oval shape glass, and then below it you have an image of Jesus. Could you explain that piece?
Yes.
So that piece is a lenticular print framed, and the glass piece in front of it is pretty much it's a format that we've been using for many years. It's basically the Virgin of Guadalupe without the Virgin. So we keep the frame as a metaphor for a portal of life. So that makes sense, and behind the lenticular.
And that's why Jesus is right below there too, also anatomically correct if you want to go there. And so next question.
Being born and raised in Barrio Logan, just wanted to know what was the reason and also what drew you to that hub?
Well, I mean, we've known it for many years, and we've seen the art scene sort of go up in Barrio Logan, but also our friend who has a hot shop, a glass shop, we call it a hot shop, started in the Glass House, I believe, and then moved to Bread and Salt, where we have our own studio in San Diego's in Bread and Salt. So, so we love all of this art and that's happening, but if you keep up with, for instance, what's happened in LA with Boyle Heights, there's been some pushback from the community when these art galleries come in, and you know, you have to play nice. You have to bring the barrio with you when you gentrify, and there's no easy answers here. There really aren't, because we all, like I said, I mean, I want nice coffee. I want good food, and all of that's great. But then people it's like the Mission in San Francisco, where one of the famous murals I saw was after an earthquake. It said leveling the playground. You know, kind of like saying this is the only way to bring it back to the people moving in, because they're all being priced out. Terrifically difficult questions, like the homeless, for instance. How are you compassionate and at the same time run a city? Super difficult questions. We don't have any answers to these. Don't even pretend to. They're very complex. They require everybody's input. And what's for sure is that people need to be heard, or they will revolt, like happened in Boyle Heights.
I want to thank this wonderful audience for being here, and I want to thank the ICA for making this extraordinary exhibition, and most of all, I want to thank Einar and Jamex for your generous answering of all our questions today.
I think we can have a drink now.
Yes.
Well done.
Well, I didn't get to ask my question. I just have to ask it in front of everybody. My mom immigrated from Guadalajara, 𝗖𝗍 𝗕𝗿𝗂𝗁𝗖𝗍